All right, so there you have some members of the University of Lagos, the unions there, marching in solidarity with the Vice Chancellor. Well, now that's a controversy now because there are reports that, they had announced, the council had announced that he was removed. That's the governing council. Now, these unions, made up of ASUU, SANU, the National Association of Academic Technologists, NASU, both of the University of Lagos and the UNILAG branch, all pulling together, saying that that is not the way to go. Now, the council, after that meeting held on Wednesday in the NUC in Abuja, in the nation's capital, the ministry at the moment, the Ministry of Education, saying that they're not aware, they haven't gotten any updates or brief on that particular matter. So there was a Congress meeting that held yesterday about this, and they came up with a communique which roundly condemned the removal of the Vice Chancellor, saying that that is not right. But they've since announced an acting Vice Chancellor, someone to act in that capacity. So they are at loggerheads at the moment concerning what is the way forward. Different parties holding their grounds on the matter. Well, to give us some perspective on what transpired yesterday and perhaps beyond, we've got Dr. Dele Ashiru, who is the UNILAG chapter chairman of ASUU. He joins us this morning. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. Well, at the moment, it appears no let up on this entire matter. That Congress that held yesterday, was the Congress abreast of all of those issues? Because there are reports indicating the contrary. But first of all, give us the current position. Is the Congress still sticking with their position on saying no to the removal of Professor Ogundipe? Okay, so we will try and get that back and then, get him to give his perspective. So if you can hear me, could you go ahead? Is the Congress, are the union still sticking to the grounds that the removal of Professor Ogundipe didn't go through the process?
Well, thank you very much for this invitation. At the end of our Congress yesterday, as it has been reported, it was made abundantly clear that the processes leading to the removal of the Vice Chancellor was not only illegal, it was lawless. The act establishing the university and the Miscellaneous Provisions, Universities Miscellaneous Provisions Act, which empowered council to hire and fire, also stipulated a procedure for firing a vice chancellor. The contention of the University of Lagos Senate and that of all the unions on campus is that that procedure has not been followed. In fact, the purported appointment of an acting vice chancellor also has not followed the due process, because what the law says is that council must take recommendation from Senate on who to be appointed as an acting vice chancellor. That also has not been done. So as far as unions in the university is concerned, as far as the University of Lagos Senate is concerned, the purported removal of the vice chancellor is illegal and is unacceptable, and we call on government to
Okay, well, system just seems to be freezing on us. But Dr. Ashiru, now what happens? So, could you talk to us about the reasons that was adduced concerning this announcement? Because they say there are grave allegations against not just him, but some other members that were affected before this announcement?
Well, the reasons that were adduced were that the Vice Chancellor was alleged of misconduct, abuse of office, financial recklessness, etc. But the contention of our union and that of other stakeholders is that, yes, the holder, the occupier of an office can be accused, can be alleged to have done things that are against the regulations of the university. And ASUU and other unions are not against the processes of disciplining any erring officer of the university. But we cannot resort to jungle justice. We cannot resort to a situation where people will do as they choose without recourse to the law. And that is why we are saying that if Chancellor has been committed offenses, the best thing to do is to take him through the disciplinary processes as enshrined in the law of the university. That an individual will sit in judgment, he will be the accuser, he will be the prosecutor, and the judge at the same time would be a recipe for anarchy. And that is why we are saying that if the council feels very strongly that Professor Toyin Ogundi committed any, he so tried so that it will be clear to everybody that he's been given a chance to defend himself according to the provisions of the law, and if so found guilty, the appropriate disciplinary measure as enshrined in the law can be meted out to him.
Now, we are also all aware that the Governing Council has since announced Professor Soyombo as acting VC. And of course, you have said, and of course, Professor Ogundikwe has also said that he is still the substantive Vice Chancellor. At this moment, who is in office?
Well, by the resolution of Senate, and Senate is the highest decision-making organ of the university. By that resolution, Professor Toyin Ogundikwe remains the subsisting Vice Chancellor in the University of Lagos. Even the law that empowers the council to appoint somebody in acting capacity provides that Senate will give that recommendation. In all of these matters, the council has not consulted Senate in any form, and it is characteristic of the Wale Babalakin-led council to flagrantly, violate regulations and show contempt and disdain for the university Senate. Such a mindset is not the type that can move Nigerian university education forward.
When you say it is characteristic, since when?
Since inception in office. Indeed, I can give you about 2-3 examples of instances where Dr. Wale Babalaki had denigrated the University Senate. The first, of course, was the decision to step down a Senate recommendation to appoint Professor Dele Olowo-Kudejo as a distinguished professor of the university. Indeed, he wrote a very rude letter. Dr. Wale Babalaki wrote an extremely rude letter to the University Senate. Not only that, when the convocation ceremonies of the University of Lagos were also unilaterally cancelled by him, and Senate organized a special meeting to prevail on him to reconsider his position.
The reports that we have, just one moment, Dr. Shuru. the report we have, especially of the last, issue that you just raised, is that cancellation or postponement of the convocation ceremonies came from the Ministry of Education, especially the minister, and not the chairman of the governing council. So at what point do you now say that it is Dr. Wale?
That is correct. But that is, of course, that is correct. But why did the ministry cancel the convocation? Dr. Wale Babalake wrote to the ministry to say that council had not been informed about the university's convocation.
Okay, but Dr. Ashiru,
presiding over council and approved.
But it does appear as though there's an axe to grind with Dr. Babalake, but because if it was the ministry that had that announcement, how then do you come to the conclusion that it was a unilateral decision after the ministry took that decision? Wouldn't they have considered the processes before they eventually decided to take their own decision?
Thank you very much. That is a very brilliant question. In the letter conveying the cancellation of the convocation ceremony, it was clearly stated there the reason why. And what they said was that the pro-chancellor said he had not been informed about the convocation ceremonies. This is contrary to what was documented in the minutes of the council meetings that we had. And the evidence are there in the university to prove the position of Dr. Wale Babalake to be false.
So, concerning this situation as it is right now, it's certainly not what the students or the academic community want to see, because they want to see education moving forward. Now, if the Ministry of Education says, well, we've equally looked at this and we're sticking with that decision, what then happens?
Well, the visitor is the one statutorily allowed by law to take such decisions, which is the president. We are confident that the ministry will examine the illegality in the processes leading to the removal of the vice chancellor and do what is right in the interest of justice, in the interest of the rule of law. The bone of contention actually is that the process of removing the vice chancellor was fraught with a lot of illegalities. And I'm sure the ministry is conscious of this fact. We are confident that we will get justice from the ministry, and we are sure that it will be in the interest of the Nigerian education system to defend the rule of law and the processes in the Nigerian university system.
Jemilin just talked about the university community and, of course, the students as well. I mean, hearing all of this, in your opinion, how are the students taking this? How far-reaching is the impact of all of this that's happening on this university community, especially the students?
Well, certainly it would have a very devastating effect on our students, because when students are made to learn under a dictatorial and tyrannical environment, it leaves a lasting impact. And that is why it is the opinion of our union that this crisis in UNILAG, perennial as it appears since Babalake became pro-chancellor, was needless and could have been avoided. And that is why it has become imperative for the relevant agencies of government to intervene in this crisis in the interest of the rule of law and in the interest of the university community and our students.
Has the unions, your union and, a number of others that have been a part of this conversation over time, what have you done to try to mitigate between the, especially the major warring parties, to make sure it doesn't get this far in the first place?
Another very brilliant question. The first was that our union set up a committee of 5 to intervene with the Pro-Chancellor when this crisis started brewing. We met the Pro-Chancellor in his chamber on the island. He gave a lot of promises. He told us he was going to do all he could to avert this crisis situation. Immediately after that meeting, the Pro-Chancellor reneged on all the promises he gave. The leadership of our union will call him, he will not pick. We will send text messages to him, he will not reply. You will send emails to him, he will never reply. The Alumni Association of the university had intervened severally.
Well, it would be really nice to hear what the Alumni Association has done, because, I mean, over the years, I mean, one would expect that, you know, maybe some intervention at that level would have gone on, seeing that there are quite a number of prominent and well-meaning Nigerians who have passed through the university system. It will also be, you know, a good idea to find out what the law says about this. I mean, find someone to, you know, give us a perspective.
Well, yeah, but before that, I mean, whilst we're getting back, we'd like him to equally respond to, because the joint communique, which they put up yesterday, they listed certain grounds that were not satisfied. So, Dr. Ashiru, that joint communique that was issued yesterday by the Congress, some of the conditions there was that while you were dissatisfied is that there wasn't any report that was published about any findings whatsoever. Is it that you didn't receive the report, or they didn't see any report, or there was no report whatsoever? Because if you look through here, there are reports which say that, talking about the findings, the audit findings of that committee, which the 9-member subcommittee of the council, which was led by a lecturer of chemistry at Tafawa Balewa University, Bauchi, which came up with some findings. So are you privy to this before that
yes,
communique came through?
Thank you very much. There was...
Yes.
Is the right to dig out facts. The Dogara committee found out that there were, according to the report, infractions by the university management in terms of management of finances and all that. Now, that by the law is the first step. An allegation has been established. What the law now says is that the council will now officially inform the vice chancellor that you have been alleged to have done 1, misconduct, 2, 3, 4. After that, the council will now set up a joint committee of council and senate of the university, who will now give the senate, who will now give that investigative committee the mandate to invite the vice chancellor to respond to these allegations. The law provides that the vice chancellor can even come to that panel with his own lawyer. After that investigation, a report must now go back to council. After the deliberation of that report, council will now decide in its wisdom whether a case has been established against the vice chancellor. It is only after that that council will now decide on what disciplinary measure to make out to the vice chancellor, either to suspend him or to remove him or to carry out any other disciplinary measure as may be deemed fit by council. All of these processes have not been followed.
But Dr. Ashiru, the thing is, if you're aware of that report, how then did this communique indicate that there was no formal report from any investigative committee?
Yeah, what we are saying, you seem not to get.
And it keeps coming in broken. I guess we're missing some part of your submissions. Okay, so we'll just try and reconnect so we can get the full text of his submissions, because it's not too clear what he said, because I'm trying to understand his point of view, if they are privy of that report, or if that report didn't still go through all of the processes, as a result is inchoate. So just want him to explain that context. Like, I think it's a contextual matter. So,
well, while that is valid, the laws are very clear on what the processes should be. If all of this is going on,
but if there's a report, maybe he was talking about subjecting it to processes as well. So who knows? But you were talking about getting a legal perspective on this matter. All right,
it's essential. So we have Ebonluadegboroa SAN, joining us to give some perspective on all of this. You are aware. Thanks for joining us. You are aware of all of this that's happening as far as the removal of the UNILAG VC is concerned. Could you shed some light on what the legal process should be? Whatever law it is that you would want to quote, because many people are saying that it didn't go through the proper process. What's your take?
Thank you very much. Good morning. The events going on at the University of Lagos concerning the Vice Chancellor, I would say with all due respect, is most unfortunate. And having regard to the struggles of students, academic and non-academic staff of the universities this many years, we never expected that we'll get to a level where we will still be entertaining dictatorship within the university system. What has gone on at the University of Lagos can only be described as a total charade. There's no place in law at all, or even in morality. Now, the law governing the removal of a vice chancellor has been unified throughout all universities, not just University of Lagos. And that law came in 2003, the Universities Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2003. And in this regard, Section 3, sub 8, sub 9, 10, and 11. And the procedure is so very simple, even to a non-lawyer. If you want to remove a vice chancellor, because the vice chancellor is the person who is next in authority to the pro-chancellor. So he's the academic chief executive of the institution. If you need to remove that person who is the brain and head of that institution, the process is very simple. It can only be initiated by 3 people: the council of the university, the senate of the university, or the congregation of the university. And the process of initiation is that you will sign a document indicating that you intend to remove the vice chancellor. The document will be authored to be signed by either members of council, members of senate, or members of the congregation. After signing that document and submitting it to the council will then set up a joint committee. That joint committee will comprise 3 members of council, 3 members of the senate, 2 members of the senate, making 5 persons. The member of council will head that committee, and the terms of reference will be to investigate allegations of gross misconduct against the vice chancellor. When that committee is set up, the committee will then draft allegations and give to the vice chancellor and give him an opportunity to respond to those allegations. The vice chancellor can do so through a written response or do so through a legal practitioner. After the committee has taken the response of the vice chancellor, the committee will then make a finding and make a recommendation back to council. The council will then convene a meeting and still invite the vice chancellor to respond to the recommendations of the subcommittee. Then the council will then convene another meeting and take a decision whether or not to remove the vice chancellor. After a decision has been taken, the council will then communicate to the visitor of the university, who is the president. And the president will then wait and call upon the vice chancellor, because the vice chancellor has a right of appeal against the decision of the council. Both the vice chancellor and the council will wait for the president to determine the appeal of the vice chancellor. It is after all this process you can then announce whether the vice chancellor has been removed or not. Now, what happened in the University of Lagos? On the 10th of this month, August, the registrar of the council issued out a notice saying that the chairman of council had directed him to convene an emergency meeting of council for the 12th of August. Under the standing orders of the University of Lagos Council, an emergency meeting is only meant to determine minor issues. Minor issues. There shall be no resolution. There shall be no decision taken at any emergency meeting. The same council that made its own standing orders. And now, according to the standing order of that council, if you want to convene an emergency meeting of the council, you must take the agenda and list the issues to be discussed. It was the Vice Chancellor that wrote a letter to the Chairman of Council requesting for an emergency meeting to consider the issue of budget. Because the council has not been meeting, convocation was suspended, the university is not running. And so they said, we can't be spending money unless there's approval by council. So this meeting was supposed to be convened to consider the issue of budget of the university. And that meeting was convened for Abuja because the chairman of council had been declared personal grantor by the whole university community. He's a lone ranger. So when they got to Abuja for this emergency meeting, note what I said, emergency meeting, the chairman of council then got up and said there's no reason to discuss anything. What they want to discuss is the issue of a report of a committee. So he asked the Vice Chancellor to leave the meeting. The Vice Chancellor protested and said, we are here to discuss the issue of budget. He insisted. And then he told the Deputy Vice Chancellor to also leave the meeting. Then council members then protested and said, we're not here for all this. What is this drama? We're here for budget. Anyway, in order not to cause commotion, the Vice Chancellor left the meeting as an obedient citizen. The Deputy Vice Chancellor left the meeting. And thereafter, the chairman of council then called upon a member to present a report. The report was presented, and the chairman said, let us vote to remove the Vice Chancellor. And the member said, what are you talking about? We're not here for removal of Vice Chancellor. This is an emergency meeting of council. And the chairman then went out and came back and gave them his phone number. The standing order of the University of Lagos Council says if you want to vote in the council meeting, it will be by show of hands or by secret ballot. Everybody must be present. The chairman will then preside over that meeting to know the outcome of the vote. But in this case, the Vice Chancellor gave them the chairman of council gave them his phone number and said members should indicate their choice through WhatsApp message to him. So he left the meeting. And then people were then sending messages to him, and he came back and said he has taken a decision. People voted for the removal, so we are removing the Vice Chancellor. And said so the meeting will reconvene by 5 o'clock. Let me finish. He said the meeting will reconvene by 5 o'clock to appoint an acting Vice Chancellor. Now, Chamberlain, with all due respect, under the law setting up the university, if you remove a Vice Chancellor, you must inform the university of community, the Senate, the congregation, who are the owners and the people in the university. The Senate will then meet, and according to Section 3 of 11 of the University Miscellaneous Act, the Senate will recommend to the council the person to be appointed as the acting Vice Chancellor. The same day the council purported to remove the Vice Chancellor, without information to the Senate, without any meeting to anybody, it then purported to announce a Vice Chancellor, causing total crisis in that university. This university that is one of the best in Nigeria.
This has been on for a while. The Ministry of Education, there hasn't been any decision taken by them at the moment. How should they be approaching this?
I think the matter is very straightforward. The federal government cannot maintain any silence in this matter because we're talking about the destiny of youth and the leaders of this nation. The federal government has already issued a release through the Ministry of Education that they are waiting to be briefed because according to the law setting up University of Lagos, there are 4 members of the federal government who must be in the council. There must be a representative of the Minister of Education. When that representative got to that meeting, Dr. Babalakin refused to allow him participate, claiming that he came late. So even the federal government was not allowed to even be part of the meeting. And this cannot happen. So I'm advising the federal government, first of all, to look at the composition of that council. In that council of the University of Lagos, one of the best universities in Nigeria, Dr. Babalakin has a member of his chambers sitting on the council, said to be representing Rivers State when that person is from Ekiti State. We can't continue like this. The federal government can't maintain any silence. They must look into the University of Lagos and dissolve that council and allow the proper method of law to take place. That is my advice to the federal government. They should dissolve the council.
All right, then. We do thank you very much indeed for your thoughts this morning, Ebunlo Adegborowa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Well, let's get back. Dr. Ashuri was just trying to clarify the context of his submissions about whether or not the report that is out there has any bearing in terms of either the processes or authenticity. Dr. Ashuri, could you go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you very much. The point I try to make is that the report in question is not the report in the face of the law. It's not the report that the law envisaged that will cause the removal of the Vice Chancellor. The learned Silk, who just spoke, had explained explicitly what the law says about the removal of a Vice Chancellor. The first report under reference is a fact-finding committee report of council. It is only after then that an official letter will be written to the Vice Chancellor notifying him of those infractions. And the processes will then follow, as has been explained by Barrister Ebunlo Adegborowa, SAN.
Okay. So at the moment now, what would you suggest as, because if the acting Vice Chancellor continues to act in that stead, and this is a stalemate, or should we just wait this out because we understand Professor Ogundipe has gone to court on this matter?
Well, as far as the law is concerned, there's no acting Vice Chancellor in UNILAG. Because what the law says is that an acting Vice Chancellor can only be appointed on the recommendation of the Senate. As I speak with you, the Senate of the University of Lagos has not been officially informed either of the removal of Professor Toyin Ogundipe or the appointment of an acting Vice Chancellor. So, as far as the University of Lagos Senate and community is concerned, there's nobody like an acting Vice Chancellor.
All right.
And
Okay,
our recommendation is that it is clear that the Wale Babalakin-led council is a lawless council. And the federal government cannot be seen to be supporting illegality and violation of the rule of law. And that's why we are saying that government should order a status quo ante. We should go back to the situation in UNILAG before this illegal council meeting.
all right, Dr. Ashuri, we do appreciate your thoughts this morning, but we'll hopefully wait and see how this is eventually sorted, because this is not the way this should go down. But we did reach out to the council chair. We haven't gotten any response at the moment, whether or not they want to get their perspectives out there. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.